Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld. I'm so happy to be joined here with a co-host, my co-host, Suzanne Ross, and my very, very special friend and guest, Linda Moulton Howe, who is at the leading edge of disclosure, discovery. Her Earth Files YouTube channel is fantastic. Subscribe to that because she's at 249,000. We want to take her to 250,000. So go to Earth. You don't have to get away from the program right now, but when you finish, go to Earth. Go to Earth File, subscribe, because Linda, you are doing a fantastic job. I'm getting the latest in revelations from you, and it's okay to ask the questions. You said, are you going too far last show? And it's okay.
I just have to say, on a personal note, my father, who is passed, he had a missing time experience, and his whole life he was rather obsessed with life in the universe. And He was always pointing up at the sky. He introduced me to ancient aliens over 10 years ago. And that's when I was first introduced to you, Linda. I have so much admiration and respect. You've been an investigative journalist for over 40 years. Right. So thank you for how you've served and awakened us all to the reality of life in the cosmos.
And God bless your father wherever he is. And I want you to know we started our 16th season in Ancient Aliens. I just got back from LA. And to know that we have been going for 16 seasons, and it's like an infinite number of shows that we can now do, as we are finally getting up to the headline that I hope has happened before your Sedona conference, that we are not alone in this universe.
I just want to say the interesting thing about Suzanne's father, I hope you don't mind me saying, it's that she worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in what, the 40s, 50s, and 60s?
My father worked at NCR. He was recruited by NCR shortly after his missing time experience.
That was Patterson, NCR. Patterson owned National Cash Register. Yeah. And so he worked for Patterson, I would say.
That's right. He was recruited by NCR. Mm-hmm. Then, after I was born in Mount Shasta, we were moved to Dayton, Ohio. And yes, he was involved with Wright-Pat because, yes, NCR was founded by James Patterson. And my father was also involved with German-speaking men who would come to our house and lay out blueprints. And my father spoke German. His mother was German. And so it was all very interesting. He had a chip in his wrist. My whole upbringing, my father called it his alien chip. And he would hold it. And he became a genius on the front lines of the emerging computer age with just a one-room schoolhouse education in a little town in the prairies of Alberta. So, yeah, that's why he was so interested in ancient aliens.
And I can tell you, this is a fact. Wright-Patterson was at the very first base to have surgeons that were doing autopsies on extraterrestrial biological entities. This is an event that happened in the 40s, and I've covered it at Earth Files and my Earth Files YouTube channel. A surgeon who is the source to me through an intermediary, because after all those decades, he still was afraid of being identified for his family. But through an intermediary, I was able to hear his story of how he got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a higher ranking, yet over to told him where to go. And the man was a high ranking surgeon, and he's being talked to, get up. You have to be there, and they'll give you instructions when you get there. And this high surgeon ends up coming into a room where somebody hands him a clipboard that had some kind of a ruled notebook in it, and gave him a pen and said, your job is to write down everything that the surgeons say on these bodies. And he was told where to stand approximately 3 feet from the edge of the hospital bed, that one of the grays with the 6 fingers, which today we know is a real subset, 6-fingered being. And the surgeons are on this side. And this man, who was ordered to write down everything that the surgeon said, his first notes, they are getting ready for a scalpel cut. They are talking about whether it should be a T cut or a Y cut as an autopsy. Y cut would be this way, a T cut would be this way. They're talking about that. That one of the surgeons takes a scalpel. They made an agreement. Goes like this. The surgeon's watching, and the arm is doing this. And he said, I can't cut this. This is not skin. That was the first introduction of our government to a completely different biological system, that the leotards that are worn for protection, that was what they encountered in that autopsy at Wright-Patterson. Today, we now hear that the leotards that have the round rings, the tall whites, the grays, all of them, it isn't gray skin on the grays. It's this biological physics, chemistry, what some people in Hollywood would call it a skin suit. So they wore skin suits for protection.
Wow. Well, I also want to go mention that fact that Suzanne said her father had an implant. Was that an alien implant, Suzanne? Or what kind of implant?
Well, after his missing time experience, which was 4 hours from around 8 p.m. to midnight, the next day when he awoke, he noticed he had this triangular gray object under his skin. Now, growing up, I can tell you, it was a raised triangular shape object that had a grayish color. And it was after his missing time experience.
In brand new information recently, I have gotten from a source who wants to remain anonymous, but to say that they are military aerospace at least puts them in where their knowledge is. And I got this note. I've heard your reports having to do with implants. I want you to know that the extraterrestrials use implants in their bodies for everything from communication to science.
Wow.
The implants are in the ET bodies. When they put one in us on the Earth, they have, as long as they want, they have communication telepathically with any human on the Earth.
Well, I also want to show this slide where it's taken from your last show, I think, where you say this, Linda. Let me just pull this slide up, play current slide. Do you see that here? This is from your show, September 16th. So the implant removal center would run by the U.S. Navy out of Naval Air Force Base in San Diego. Every year, at least 50 Marine Corps recruits have those implants removed during boot camp. 50 a year. So these people are being abducted against their awareness, and that's 50 a year just from maybe a couple of thousand. What does that mean for the whole human population? Does everyone, 1/5 of the population, have implants? I mean, how deep does the implant thing go?
It's a good question. And this is an example of the kind of communications that I get from people in military and medicine and aerospace and science after each show. That was a quote that was put up from something that we received. And everyone knows, and these people, when I get physically face to face, they say, we know we can trust you, that you have never violated anyone. And it is really important at this time, even though to me, I want to say, but you all are the ones who should be announcing all of this to us, the whole world. But as long as I feel confident that the information that is coming to me is reliable based on the past, that is information that ties all the way back to the year, it was 1990, 91, 92, it was in there. And Bob Bigelow and Prince Hans Adam in Europe paid for and organized a meeting. I believe it was in Boston. I think Dr. John Mack was there, and I was there, and there were maybe 20 of us who came together to look at evidence of the implants. And there was one presentation done by a microbiologist from the University of Michigan. And I'll never forget this, because we had been talking about exactly the kind of thing you're talking about, that you could identify a shape in the skin, that people could feel them. There had been a shard taken out of one person's shin. Okay, this is a whole other order. This was a presentation, University of Michigan microbiologist, that he had found what would be a foreign object, and it was in a foot, but it was made entirely out of that human body's tissue. It was disconnected from the body. It was not hooked into anything. It was on the shin bone. And when they found it through MRI. And then when they went in with the permission of the person, it was not attached. It was in the classic category of an implant, but made entirely of that person's biology. And that raised the question of how more secret are the implants if a lot of them are actually being made by sophisticated, we'll call it advanced science that's part biological and part metallic, that we would end up discovering that we are being tracked. Some people are being tracked, and that the number could be as high as what you're deducting from that quote. And to reinforce, when they paid for a Gallup poll, Bob Bigelow and Prince Hans Adam, and I have one of the books, and all of us who were there have one of the books, in which the Gallup poll found between 3% and 4% of the world's population were probably abductees. How many would have implants?
Well, this is, I heard that was in the 90s, 92 or something, that Roper poll that Bigelow sponsored.
That's our meeting was about.
I know, but is it still going on? Because a lot of people say that the abductions have lessened since like 2000, and as these century kind of move forward, and I'm hearing less about it. People may be remembering it more. What's your opinion? Are there less abductions?
From my point of view, but then I'm not representative of the world population. I'm representative of somebody who for half a century has been trying to get information, get to the bottom of all this. So I would tend to get a lot more reports. And I would say that there is no fall off in the abduction reports that I have gotten last year, the year before, the year or now. For me, it has not been fallen off. It gets more sophisticated. What is happening to people and what kind of information is being given, and the sense that the people have about the different beings is becoming much more refined and detailed. If you go back 50 years, it was grays, and then people added blonde Nordics and the reptilians, and that was it. Those were sort of the three that you heard. Today, people are illustrating 12, 15, 20 different types.
So going back to the implants, it can't be just simply tracking humans. Are they manipulating humans? Whitley talks about getting inspiration from his implant. I mean, what's your best educated guess? And you're probably the best one to ask, what's the implants about?
I think it's all, depending upon which non-human has a focus on which Homo sapien. And if it's a tall white, for example, they seem to be more refined, truly more spiritual, very strict. They can cut people off with a hand, meaning a gesture. But at the same time, if they have an implant in a human, I would say I have the impression it is not for a nefarious reason. It is for tracking and perhaps even guiding, that there are beings that do care about humanity. Then there are a bunch of others that do not. and that are in competition in many ways and have been for a long time with the surface life. But here's the most important part to every aspect of your question. Planet Earth, from more than one source, has had at least 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations on our planet for at least 278 million years. Those presences, 3, 4, 5, 6, they don't live on the surface. That's in competition with what they are in competition with, that they're harvesting from, and a whole lot of other things that relate to the relationship between ETs and humans on the surface. Humans have got to understand that extraterrestrial presence on this planet, on the moon, on Mars, and beyond goes underground. The government caught on to that in World War II. And as soon as you began seriously analyzing what both abductees say about the motives of ETs interacting with them, and then the people who are whistleblowers in aerospace and medicine and science, it is that we have occupation like a hotel, but it's been 278 million years for a group of reptilians, several groups of blondes and grays, where 10 years ago, people were still talking about grays like one thing. It's so clear that right now there is a 7 to 8 foot tall, extremely thin, very advanced. Their civilization might be 10 billion years old. They have a civilization on the solar system, Epsilon Indi. They are the ones that made a huge variety of what we would call AI androids, and in some cases, pure robots, meaning no biology. Androids are biological AI, robots are mechanical. And that they have had a long history on our planet. And so have Nordics, tall whites, reptilians, the list goes on. And that where they have competed with themselves over the last 278 million years, and we are now the current DNA manipulated in already evolving primates. That's us. They did it. We're us who have been denied the truth from the ETs and from human power brokers. So when you start looking at the big picture of where we are now, in a strange way, one of the strangest questions, after 278 million years of genetic manipulation that included at least the tall whites that are supposed to be spiritual, why is Homo sapien on Earth in 2023 so violent, so at war, destroying the environment, doing everything that would be the opposite of what the tall whites would want, or that even the grays from Epsilon Indi, the reptilians would like to see us gone. They would like to see us self-destruct. So now the playing field, the landscape of the world that we are in right now, you cannot take the reptilians out as being masterful in terms of manipulating horrors on this planet through humans.
Well, there's one theory that there's a race of, some people call them the archons, and they live off of intense human emotion. They actually feed off of it, fear and hate and anger, and that's their food. I'm sure you've heard that. And
Yes.
the more wars.
But I can't relate to it because it was in a movie. I saw the movie about the louche sort of stuff that was empowering or in somehow keeping some ETs going. But if you went to all of the abductees, and I literally have, it's not an exaggeration, I have interviewed approximately 3,000 people in the abduction syndrome over 44 years. And I cannot think of a specific case of any kind in which any abductee was the origin of having any exposure to or understanding that the emotions, horrible, vile emotions, were being fed on by something like a reptilian presence that wants us gone. And right now, just between what you're saying and what I'm saying, is sort of collapsing why the last 85, 86 years since World War II. Our government was learning all kinds of things about the blonde Nordics, because that's who Hitler was allied with or trying to be allied with. They knew that they were picking up from crash sites in New Mexico and earlier that were either biological or something else, clones. When they found clones in Missouri and other places, if I were FDR or Truman and Eisenhower came next, I can almost feel the shock that I would have had if somebody came to me with a report. We have just found a UFO crashed in Missouri, and there are 2 beings or 3 beings. We have done some analysis, and they are clones. And that is exactly what was supposed to have been reported in 1941 spring. We entered World War II with the attack of Japan in December of 41, a few months later. How much did FDR and Truman and the generals, how much did they know when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor? I think they already knew a lot. And that what happened in World War II, we were in a war against Germany. Germany, through Hitler, was saying that he was allied with blonde, blue-eyed ETs from the solar system, Aldebaran. And there were all kinds of, we'll say, cross currents. And a lot of the cross currents and the strangeness of the documents coming out of World War II is because our government made a decision with England and Australia and New Zealand and Canada, the Five Eyes. We made an agreement that we were not going to, the we being the royal we of the leaders, that we were not going to inform humanity because there is a release in the National Institute in Archive in England. And it was a letter that was sent in I think it was 1986 is the last release of a lot of documents, or 2006. But there was a letter from a scientist about his father doing security for Churchill, Winston Churchill. And that Winston Churchill was in a garden in a building with Dwight D. Eisenhower. And they were talking about an incident that had occurred in Germany around an RAF plane, and that the pilot reported that a silver round sphere came to at the tail of their plane and started doing spirals around their whole plane. Everybody could see it. The report went back to Winston Churchill, and now the security officer is hearing Winston Churchill say to Dwight D. Eisenhower, then general, who would become president, we must keep this extraterrestrial presence a secret for at least another 50 years, or religions will deteriorate, the stock market will fall. And he gave a list of all the things, and that Eisenhower allegedly agreed. And it was all put in a letter that is now in the National Archives in Great Britain from the National Archive release, which I think was 2006.
Well, you know, everything you're saying here, Linda, is so complex. It's so multi-layered, the whole situation. The fact that these competing extraterrestrial races have been here manipulating, controlling humans, implanting them. And I say there's 2 sides to the story. There's the offense, which is the ETs, and there's the defense, which is the defensive department, so there's offense and defense. And, there's just so much. Well, I want to go into a question I've been thinking about for a while. And this just is a quote from a Rilke letter. And I think it really applies to disclosure. And it says, the tremendous effort only seems to be so great because we overestimate the victory. It's not the victory that is a great thing that we think we have performed, although we're right in our feelings. The great thing is that there was already something that we could put in place of that deception, something true and real. Without that, our victory would only be a moral reaction with any further meaning. As it is now, it has become an epoch. So for me, that means, do you understand? You want to read that again? For me, that means that all this going back and forth for 75 years, the struggle has deepened our resolve and our commitment to the truth, and has helped us and people like you understand the complicated issues that this phenomena involves. If they would have said, yeah, there's aliens, it's fine, we would not have developed the depth of study that you in particular are so much at the source of. Does that make sense, Linda?
It does, but Rilke, who wrote these words to a young poet, as it says in the top, what he was referring to is so far removed from my sense of Rilke, of UFOs and ETs and technology that is as fast or faster than the speed of light, that we are able to use Alcubierre warp drive, which in that age, no one would have even had a concept. And now today, I'm becoming at least conversant with some scientists. I have learned enough that I can talk with them. I can ask questions. They talk to me either face to face, very rarely at a conference, or through FedEx or through Proton Mail or some other way. And the very fact that I am beginning to grasp other dimensions. And when you go to other dimensions, I'm not talking poetry. I am not talking the way it would have been used in a book 100 years ago. That the truth is, we are in a multi-dimensional cosmos in which we, on this matter world, in this particular universe, with the rules that affect the subatomic particles here, there is another universe in the dimension, and they say that next door, because the frequencies are all different. Mm-hmm. And each dimension, the frequencies are different, but there are ETs that can go into any and all of these dimensions, in and out, move through time. That is the reality. And we humans, so far, we are so far away from being able to talk with understanding with each other about other dimensions. And yet the tall whites, if they were allowed, it might be that they would explain the best thing you have, Homo sapiens sapien, that we have contributed to genetic manipulation to create you, are your souls. And you're on a planet that doesn't even know for sure if souls are real. That's the disconnect.
Right.
If we understood how the physics of 12 dimensions and the physics of souls in all 12 dimensions worked, I don't see how humans after that could ever kill each other.
Right. Well, the problem is that, religion has taken the place of a true science of the soul and the science of essence. And so it's been glossed over with dogma, and we never get to the understanding of what incarnation, what the magic of being embodied is really all about. And this is what I like to push for, the sense of what are we really? What is the magic of the human being? And I think this is why some of these ETs are here. And you've said this yourself, to discover what makes us human. What is the soul? And maybe they are wanting to create that. Although I do think in the genetic manipulations, they are taking essences of us, like, you know, when they do heart transplants or liver transplants, the recipient takes on some of the essence of the donor. And I think they are taking on some of the essence with the genetic manipulations from human beings. Do you agree with that? These ETs, when they create the hybrids, they're being ensouled with our genetic lineages.
I'm not so sure that they're being ensouled with us, but I think that it is very clear that we are a difficult people, that when you go back to Enlil and Enki and Samaria and Anunnaki and the words that have been translated from limestone, humans were too noisy. They were created by Enlil and Enki to help build things, all of the kind of old traditional sense that we've had of our old human selves. But the truth, the deeper truth, when you read some of the books that have really gone into immense detail into the Anunnaki translations, is that they were not what I would call spiritual bodies that I would feel respect for. Enlil and Enki and the whole group, they fought a lot and they fought with each other, which has always raised for me an interesting question. When did the tall whites come into the situation on a timeline? The Anunnaki, I think, were earlier. And if we are a reflection of what the Anunnaki manipulated DNA in, as a lot of the literature says, then we are violent like they were violent. But there are people who argue the tall whites, who can be extremely strict, but also extremely loving about their children and their families, and are considered to be geniuses of the universe. They can help, but they're looking at our development like a hands-off laboratory. We were set in motion, and we may have been set in motion by those that gave genetic material that created different skin colors, different personalities, all of the things that are still a huge problem in this planet for humans. The tall whites may have had the ability to have neutralized that action from the Anunnaki. So why have humans ended up fighting and killing each other over race, over sex, over political interpretations? It's like we are something extraordinary. I feel an agape love for my fellow man when I think about humanity and what people go through and what most of everybody does for their offspring. All the things that the tall white have indicated that that is what they wanted to see. So what is the energy, the pressure, the force that keeps coming on this planet century after century, in which humans end up killing themselves in wars that are in the long run so insane? Are the tall whites just watching? Are the grays just watching? Are the reptilians the only ones that are manipulating force because they want Earth without humans on it, as it's been said to me? Is the very presence of our inability to live with each other in peace and agape love the ongoing exhibit of what extraterrestrials, such as reptilians, who do not want Earth with us on it, that they are trying to kill or drive away humans? When you really start diving into those questions, the past 100, 200 years, they begin to make a little bit more sense, because Germany Hitler in his own writings and his own speeches before that war started was that he was working with blonde, blue-eyed extraterrestrials, use that word, from the star system Aldebaran. And that one of his missions was to annihilate the Hebrews. And that in that discussion between Hitler and the alleged Aldebaran extraterrestrials was the concept and idea that the Hebrews were from the old Garden of Eden reptiles. To realize that we're still in some kind of a bizarre tort cake with 7 or 10 layers, and that World War II started because of a man who was speaking words about extraterrestrials and taking out Hebrews, and we know what happened. So where does human evolution, natural human evolution, once DNA was manipulated, where does it stop and start? And a whole lot of complex cross-current pressures by competing extraterrestrial forces with different goals. Where are we today really in 2023, soon to be 2024?
Well, is there a
Can I ask a
natural?
quick question, Alan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Based on that, so just kind of taking in everything that you've presented, Linda, and wondering if an answer to that question, based on this idea of multiple dimensions that all exist in different spectrums of perception, based on the frequency resonance, and the idea of the ages of the yugas, where we go from a dark age to a golden age, could we be at the point in human evolution where we are entering in to what some people call this bifurcation, right? Where some humans who are seeking the light of a higher way of living and being and increasing their wisdom and knowledge, and some people are, have these accelerated spiritual gifts of tuning into ETs, benevolent races in higher dimensions, our conferences, all of our practices of spreading love and light, being those humans who may be on an evolutionary ascent. And then there would be certain ET races who would be supporting that. What if in this bifurcation model, that if there is then at the same time a descension arc, would there be ET races who are influencing leaders on the planet who would be then responsible for achieving that lower drop into a lower dimensional spectrum with a lower frequency? So in other words, there would be races that would be, responsible for sort of heralding in this evolutionary ascent. There could be races that are responsible for a descent as we go around this wheel of a 12,500 year ascending arc, and then a 12,500 year descending arc on the third dimensional wheel. I sometimes call a 25,000 year game. I'm just curious about your thoughts on that, that possibility.
My worry right now, as we are speaking on October 14th, 2023, we have a horrible conflict that is now going on in Israel and Gaza, land that goes back and is echoed for thousands of years of people fighting. And I received an email that was quite fascinating in terms of Putin has, at least for now, a political alliance with Iran. Iran would have been, we'll say, the home base of the Garden of Eden. In our own biblical pages, it talks about the viper who comes into the garden to communicate with the new humans. The current, looking back at the Garden of Eden story with the viper, is that the viper could not be trusted. And if you jump to 2023, October, the idea that Putin, just like Hitler, and Iran could have a backdoor arrangement at a time when they may or may not have been responsible for what has happened between Hamas and Israel. Any way you slice it, we're sitting at a crossroad that makes me feel extremely leery that this could jump from Israel and Gaza to a world event, depending upon what is exactly going on between a Putin and Iran, and who is Iran communicating with in this large landscape. And I'm not trying to be overly pessimistic. I'm trying to say that we have gone from 2 years ago is when I was told by an aerospace source who's been absolutely correct on so many things, that in April of 2023, he'd seen the planning program, told me about it. They were going to introduce TRAPPIST-1, a solar system 40 light years from here, who have 7 planets, and the middle 2 planets, E and F, look like Earth. And we have seen better photos with the Webb telescope, and this was going to be great. And they were going to open it up in April of 2023. And April of 2023 comes, and instead of opening up, it would have been simply the discovery of another planet like Earth with other beings. Yay, we're not alone in the universe. That was all anybody was hoping we could accomplish, and to be followed by huge amounts of, well, what's there and how do we get there? Even if the government of the United States has already been out there in other starships, which is, I've been told, and that's how they knew that TRAPPIST-1 has civilization on a middle planet. April comes. If anything, there were more squabbles between the Pentagon and other forces in Washington in the spring than there had been for a long time. Not any feeling that they were getting ready to say, we're not alone in the universe. April goes by. We finally get to the House subcommittee hearing in front of Representative Burchett. And you have David Grush and David Fravor and Ryan Graves, 2 very responsible, believable, credible pilots, and David Grush, who has quite an intelligence background. And from the beginning to the end on that day, I was thinking, this is solid material. I really felt like this is what the world needs to hear, and we need to expand. They adjourned. I think it only lasted 4 hours. And the next morning, the criticism of David Grush began, and it continued. And then the Pentagon Arrow says that David Grush was not telling the truth, that there's no evidence of extraterrestrials. So we have been inundated with mixed signals, conflict. And then when you step back from everything, it's like the whole huge 23 layout was calculated. As long as you mix people up and they don't get any true signal of this is true, and it's all mixed up, then they will buy another year, 2 or 10 years of having everybody say, I don't know what the truth is, leave me alone.
Well, it is coming out, and you said that on your show. Colonel General or Brigadier General John Allen, in that comment on the YouTube, said Grush is real. Yeah. It's for sure. And there's more information coming. Actually, I have a little clip of Grush talking about what is coming up in the next year. I'm going to just play that for you, okay? Because
I hope he prevails. I hope he does. But
well,
why
it seems it will. First, a little visit from our old friend Lou Elizondo, right?
Hi, Lou.
And I think Lou handed the torch to Grush. And someone says to Lou, It feels like they're trying to scale back a mountain at this moment. Are we going to reach the summit? Simply put, this is October 9th. Yes, but in no way that made me think or even want, but not in the way that many think or want. But once we are there, the view will be amazing. Keep the faith. Much, much more is coming. It's becoming increasingly difficult to keep the gatekeepers to hold back the flood. It's coming and soon. Remember, it's a process, not an event. In the meantime, stay tuned. And then we have this guy with your headline, Linda.
Good.
There he was. That's the one you've been waiting for. We're not alone in the universe. And then this is in a recent video by these Yes Theory. You know Yes Theory on YouTube?
Yeah,
They spent 7 days with Grush, and this is what came out in their 1-hour documentary.
Shouldn't it be the president saying this stuff? Like, I don't want to be the purveyor of disclosure because I don't have all the data.
Yeah.
I'm not in that leadership position, and I'm just trying to, use a public pressure to kind of, to get the executive branch to make a decision on what to release.
What is happening next is I know there's some intel officers and other people in and out of government that are about to file complaints similar to what I did, because they said, fuck it, and then they were on these programs, like firsthand dudes, not people telling me stuff, like literally the dudes touching the stuff. February of 2024, we should have a presidential panel on UAP disclosure looking at the crash retrieval issue and everything. And then within 300 days of the enactment of the act, we're going to get some kind of, I think, government statement next year on this topic. The tsunami wave is building, and I don't think we're going to totally backpedal anymore. Other than that, it would be totally speculation, but that's at least what's going to come. I think 2024 is going to be, knock on wood, potentially wild in a good way. So yeah.
There you go. Okay. There. Any comment, Linda?
Classic. We're lying. The government is lying. They're trying to keep the truth from having to be told, but we're going to have these little bits of things. And it is frustrating because some of those people, like David Grush and Lou Elizondo, know there are extraterrestrial biological entities alive and dead on this planet and in other parts of the solar system and beyond. And it is as if we're watching sort of like, okay, now how do we do another program that will get out some facts, ABC, but we don't want anybody to have enough information that they can go to Congress or go to somebody and say, let's do a public hearing and tell the whole truth. It's go stop. It's sort of government by contradiction. And that's the part that to me is so dishonest. They all know the truth. The ones that are saying there's no evidence, they're lying. And so it's almost as if we're now in a new step in which politics of denial, which is what has been used since World War II, politics of denial, official lies to keep the truth from the world. So the same thing is going on now, except that they're just allowing out a little bit more pieces and they're more disconnected, so that the big picture, I hope that me, earthfiles.com, my goal is to try to provide information that helps everybody see a bigger picture. And that's what we need, not pretending, not buying time with a subcommittee for a little tiny piece here and a little tiny piece there. When that headline, "We are not alone in the universe," is not on a black and white card at a podcast, when it is the headline of the New York Times and all of the major newspapers and TV, that's when the next Earth begins.
Right. So taking in what Susan said and all the background about wars and the awful situations humans have found themselves in for 2,000, 5,000 years. And you talk about the power brokers behind the scenes. Now, if we could somehow expose them, do you have any idea who they are. And if we could expose them, which I think the Schumer amendment is trying to do, even though it seems like just another false start. How do we get to the source? How do we get to those that are controlling and manipulating humanity, maybe at the assistance of some alien race or not, but they are closer to being exposed now than ever. So I think there is some hope. What do you make? Who are these people and how do we expose them?
False starts. You said it, false starts over and over again. Because when you have false starts, when you have a mixture of lies and truths, you dilute everybody's ability and interest because they say, well, what is the truth? And that's where so many people are now because of the way this has been, from my point of view, mishandled, but probably handled exactly the way that the power brokers wanted it to be handled. So there wasn't a growing consensus that what the government of the United States and its allies since World War II know about extraterrestrial biological entities and their artificial intelligence everywhere, here, beyond. Why can't everything be told to the whole planet?
Right.
That is, to me, truth matters. And when you have these sort of petty fighting, calculated skirmishes between Arrow in the Pentagon and Grush and the House subcommittee, you've got people who are all working in the same bubble in Washington, and they're pitted against each other. And as soon as that happens, it's what Philip J. Corso said happened during the Eisenhower years, internecine warfare. Internecine warfare means that the American taxpayer, voter, citizen says, well, what is the truth? That's exactly where they want it. And that's what's so aggravating, because the truth is that we have extraterrestrial biological entities living in this planet. They have been here for millions of years. This species, Homo sapiens sapien, technically is only 45,000 years old in the crossfade with Neanderthalensis. We are the baby. But there is something about Homo sapien that I think is extraordinary. And that I think it does relate to the power of the human soul, and that the soul's recycling through infinity, it isn't a poem. It isn't like a Valentine. We're talking about the real guts of why humans in the third dimension would have this much interest from other beings. And that if we knew the whole big picture of the evolution of an information gathering soul that can go dimension after dimension after dimension, survive infinitely, wouldn't we look at each other differently? Some of the non-humans look at us as if we are a miracle, and maybe we are, but something else wants us out of Earth. And I think that is the reptilians. And so when we ask all these questions and why all of the static from all of these conflicting points of view, allegedly in the city of Washington, that should represent the truth, and it isn't, that's why I feel betrayed in many ways. That we are at such a pivotal point. We're ready to go to Mars. Do we want to set human bases on Mars that fight each other like they do on Earth? Oh God, I hope not. And all of this here in the fall, I have another communication, and this one is even stronger, that between the in 2024 likely, but it could be 2025 at the utmost. Linda, this is the note that came to me. Linda, you will see the headline that you have wanted to see for the last half century. We are not alone in this universe.
But you're saying that's just the start of it. I mean, yes, that's just another, I mean, yeah, it's a great milestone in human history, but you're saying, I mean, Grush came out, he said it, other people have said it, and yet we still won't get, okay, we're not alone in the universe is where we start. But what you're giving us and people listening is an education of where that should go. That's just, okay, that's the first truth. And then we have to roll out the bodies and the ships.
It's that I have never wanted that headline to come out at the same time that there was internecine warfare, meaning that the way that they have controlled for 86 years since World War II has been people who would come out and say there is absolutely no truth to X, Y, and Z. And somebody else would come out in Washington and say, well, there is. And as soon as the climate of what can you believe? Len Stringfield used to say that, shaking his arms. Linda, we know there are ETs and there are craft, but the way the government handles it, nobody knows what the truth is. And so everybody walks away. And that's the part that profoundly bothers me. I feel like we are owed the truth.
Even if we don't see like the physical manifestation of these alien races, Linda, do you believe that there are certain races which are benevolent, that are trying to have a positive influence on humanity's evolution, and that then there are, say, draconian races that are having a negative influence on certain groups that are malevolent in nature and causing these wars, and maybe behind the power brokers and the greed and the trying to, take land and trying to incite, all of this global warfare, hatred, separation?
Yes, and it's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying the reptiles in the Garden of Eden. That was deception. And now we're living in a planet where the entire political system, good, bad, neutral, whatever, manipulation of public, whatever the public hears, whatever they think. We see it now in all of the political elections and fights. Nobody is asking for truth. It's how much money can you pay this person to get me 100,000 more votes? All of the priorities in politics seem to be upside down and backwards. Meanwhile, the fact that we would end up in the horror that we are now seeing on the earth between Gaza and Israel, the old land, the oldest ancient land, and if you go to Iran, Anunnaki, that it is now erupting. And when I heard that headline that every reporter was trying to see if they could confirm, and that's why they would never say it was definite, but now I think it probably is. I happened to turn on news when one of the reporters said, and we have a report of 40 babies beheaded. And I instantly felt like I wanted to vomit. I had a physical reaction of wanting to vomit. And the idea that there could be any subgroup of Homo sapiens sapien that would do that, even if it's a war that would do that, from my point of view, that's not a human with a soul.
Yeah.
That is something else completely unrecognizable. And if that is the heart of the reptilians that have been from the Garden of Eden literature, carved in sandstone, a group that wants Earth but does not want humans to be the ones running the garden. They want to be the ones running the garden. All of this is just to say, and Alan, dear Alan, my dear, dear friend, we have had so many discussions, and I know that you always, always want to bring to bear the love and the light and the depth. I know that. And I think if you boil down everything I've been trying to say, it is by now in 2023, the fact that we have not been introduced to the huge truth, we're not alone in the universe, that there are many, many, many hundreds, thousands of civilizations, and that there are power brokers, no matter what the bloodline, reptilian, tall white, they are power brokers in control of Earth at the very moment where truth, the whole truth, told to this planet in April, may have changed and averted what is happening in Israel and Gaza. So that, to me, is as if we are discussing, on the one hand, you and I, and a lot of us have been exposed to what I think are real truths. But the only way that real truth is going to prevail on planet Earth is when the leaders, respected or not, all agree to post headlines and start introducing. They have to physically introduce the non-humans. And remember when Ham Eshett in Israel, who wrote that very fascinating book a couple of years ago, when he was asked, if you're saying that there are ETs, that he was asked bluntly by a reporter, you say that there are ETs, why aren't they here? And he said, their timetable is not controlled by us humans. We want the truth, but they are the ones that are going to control when they're introduced. And if the answer to why then would the ETs not be willing to be introduced? You come back to the whole huge enchilada of the Garden of Eden, biblical metaphor or other, that humans, for 278 million years of evolution through genetic manipulation, and then 45,000 years as the species we are from Neanderthal, we've always been sort of gamed. Nobody was telling us that tall whites, grays, reptilians, blues were manipulating DNA and already evolving primates to create Homo sapien. We have an overlay that a lot of people in the Pentagon think that is why we can never open it up, that God and Christ and the avatars of history and religion, that it'll all be destroyed by saying that there's other life in the universe. And my reaction to that has always been the same as when I read that Churchill said to Eisenhower, never can be told for 50 years because religions will fall apart and the stock market will go down. It's the same thing that I would expect that the Pope in Italy would say. Ladies, gentlemen, children everywhere, to find other intelligences in this universe, it reinforces, it makes greater the thought that dwells in the light, in the divine fields, and that we humans need to know what it is like to learn truly in collaboration with the thought that dwells in the light, that we are one particular intelligence in one particular dimension, and that the universe itself is unbelievably exciting and powerful if we were told the truth. And here we are, waiting. We are still being manipulated. It is still, Alan, reality is classified until they open up everything.
Well, I love your passion, Linda. You need to be out there and talking, and I'm glad you're coming to Sedona and reaching the world on your YouTube channel. But, you know, I think it goes back to the human being. We are powerful. Our thoughts can intend frequencies of higher consciousness. We can come together and change the world and maybe stop wars. I mean, if enough of us did come together, we are that powerful. We've been dumbed down, like you've said, and we don't know who we are. So if we could rise to the occasion of empowering ourselves and each other with the truth, by demanding the truth of who we are as divine beings, as beings that have the light in us, the eternal light of divinity in us, and make an intention to come together to change reality. I think that could be a start. And then in that case, it doesn't matter if there's aliens or not. Humans will take back control of our own destiny. I mean, that's my utopian vision of what could be possible. And maybe we have to be pushed to the point of almost destruction for people to rise up together and say, okay, enough. This is enough. Let's do an end to war and all the divisions, and let's get the technology where there's free energy and people aren't enslaved to a system. I mean, that's also what the power brokers are holding back on, the fact that once these UFOs, whatever they are not filling up their gas tank to get here, there's an energy source that could power the earth, that would give people freedom. It could cultivate the deserts. It could desalinate enough water for people. It could be a paradise just with the technology that those power brokers are holding back. And I think humans have to raise their frequency. So maybe these ETs, like the tall whites, know that we deserve that or can welcome that instead of creating a bomb running on perpetual energy. Just think if that gets into wrong hands, free energy bombs. I mean, that there's no stopping wars then, but we have to change. We have the power. We've all done this. Everyone coming to Suzanne's conference is doing, everyone speaking and in the audience want exactly what you're saying. And, you know, maybe it's a movement, maybe I think it is, but yeah, there's a mainstream out there and there's people making weapons and awful things are happening. So all we could do is put out the most positive, loving force and spread that word. What were you going to say, Linda, about that? Oh, Suzanne, wait. Yeah,
well,
Linda.
I just appreciate how Linda has said multiple times that she has this sense that this current level of Homo sapien is absolutely extraordinary.
Yes.
And we don't know the limits of our capabilities. And it just has occurred to me that if it is up to the benevolent and or malevolent ET races, whether they are exposed or not, what if they're not wanting to physically manifest here or be revealed, because this particular time of this shift is up to us as the humans inhabiting planet Earth to make the powerful positive difference now. And I like, Alan, what you were saying about maybe it does require for us to get pushed to the limit where we say enough is enough and we all come together to create more unity, peace, and harmony. But, you know, with the assistance of some of the benevolent races in the way that they're coming through, you know, the channelers and such, with this extraordinary wisdom with technology and some of even like the healing technologies that have been revealed. But yes, like Alan said, it would be nice if we had access to some of those technologies of free energy.
Yes,
that our own government may have.
Yes, it's my understanding that the tall whites could do anything, everything we need. That we know what they can do.
And why don't they? Why don't they do it?
That is one of the questions. That is absolutely at the top of my list. What is it that is constraining humanity into a dumbed down political perspective, even now, as they have done this sort of clumsy bringing out some people who have had real experiences to be have the rug pulled out from under them. And right now, if you ask 100 people on the street, do you think that there are other life forms in the universe? How many of those 100 do you think would answer honestly? And how many do you think would answer what they think is the acceptable answer? And that's why this is so manipulated. We're not trying to come together at this point as with truth. It's who's going to have a piece of the Psyche asteroid. Trillions of dollars in metals in an asteroid, and everybody on Earth, every country wants it. And those are the kinds of headlines that you see. They get seriousness. They get comments from people who work for NASA and for universities. No one has any trouble talking about the asteroid that they've never seen anything quite like Psyche. It is entirely metallic on the surface. They've never seen anything like it. Well, the tall whites, probably like that, can get access to that metal. In other words, they probably have been using it. And it's the sense that everybody is being constrained in this artificial, you can't tell humanity because it will make everyone fall on the ground. Whereas Sedona, I hope that Sedona, like the name that is so beautiful, I hope that there will be something more that will have happened that we can stand in front of an audience and say, we've been telling you the truth, me, for the last 44 years, we've been telling you the truth. And now it's going to start breaking open. That's what I would like to be able to announce.
Well, let me go back to Grush a little bit here. I have a couple of other things that I picked out. This was, where is that? From the hearing. This is from the Senate, July 26th hearing.
That's Mace. Yeah.
Do you see it now? Here we go.
Uh-huh.
Something I can't
Wait.
discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred.
Wait,
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Yeah, so it goes from here to this little comment.
Yeah, I mean, it is a mind-blowing side of it, right? It's a little easy to imagine, an artifact.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it is a mind-blowing side of it, right? It's a little easy to imagine, an artifact or whatever, but when you start talking about, the biological side of it, it really throws you for a loop psychologically. It did for me, and I talked to the people that were on that aspect of the program, if you will, and I mean, it comes with the territory. I mean, buckle up, I guess. It's a thing.
Were they alive? Were they dead?
I don't want to get into specifics.
Okay.
Yeah, I know a lot of that stuff.
Out of curiosity, why are you allowed to say that NHI pilots came out of the craft, but you can't go more into
that's all I
detail?
put in the pre-publication stuff that got approved. I mean,
got it.
I could go back and ask for more.
Okay.
Any specific
Barriers.
knowledge I garnered when I was on the other side of the door, if I want to talk about that publicly, everybody who has had a job like I have has to submit it to a thing called DOPSR at the Pentagon, DoD Pre-Publication and Security Review. Even if it's about this.
You know about that, right, Linda Dopser?
Yes, and it's making my point yet again. We have all these acronyms, all of these rules to make sure that the public doesn't hear anything that is actually true. And the fact that he can say, well, there were biologicals, but that he can't say they were grays, whites, blues, reptilians, whatever. It's like playing some kind of strange game. We're not at all in the presence of a government or a world that wants to tell the truth to a population that has been lied to for millennia.
Well, he tries to get around it. Listen to the rest of this.
Stuff. Like, I know that sounds insane, but like, you literally have to say, like, this is what I want to talk about.
Why do you think they approved it?
Catch-22. Because so they'd have to self-identify and highlight their concerns to redact. So the office who would propose a redaction, say it's a 3-letter agency or whatever, so they would have to self-acknowledge. So I think when I submitted that, they had a choice, right? Either we try to sequester Dave's ability to speak publicly and try to tell him no, but then we have to give him a reason and tell him what organization said no. If it got redacted like that and it cited what organization and what security reason it is, I would just publish that. And then the public can make its own interpretation why, the U.S. government's withholding information about that kind of thing and wanted to sequester my speech.
You were also honest in the hearing and definitively said you hadn't seen the bodies. Is that
Not
right?
personally, no.
Not personally.
No.
So it's just people who very high trust. You had sort of, a lot of intersection with career-wise with them,
But they have. The people that I interviewed have, and they were some of the people that were interviewed by the Inspector General, because that was the thing is like, people were like, oh, hearsay, whatever. Okay, I understand, secondhand. I literally brought the people firsthand to the authorities. I'm just here as the meeting monkey or the unifier, trying to bring everybody together and bring the people who do have that knowledge to the right people.
Which feels also that this were the perfect set of circumstances for you to be the one that blows the whistle, because first-hand knowledge would have put you in a completely different category of being able to disclose this stuff, right?
If I became subject of a non-disclosure agreement by becoming a first-hand guy, actually would have hindered me, and I would have never been able to do this. I think about some stuff I was denied access to.
And thank God you are, right?
If I signed that non-disclosure agreement, I would have absolutely not been able to go public with this.
Then you were like,
I would have been trapped.
Fascinating.
So it's actually weird that my lack of that, but knowing the people that do though, and I brought those people to the IG, is the only way I was able to get. So the actual reprisal stuff and the access denial stuff actually enhanced my ability to operate. But I will tell you, I've talked to these people on the program. They are just so afraid because the way it was enforced over the years, the threatening nature of some of their indoctrinations where they're like, this is treason, you're going to Leavenworth if you ever tell anybody not in the program. And oh, by the way, what's the penalty for treason? Oh, right, execution, right? And the quality of people we talk to, if they ever go public, it'll blow your mind who we talk to. I mean, we're talking to some serious players that were confirmed by the Senate, years ago that we talked to, and I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I hope that they eventually go public. I understand the reputational hazards, their hazards to their legacy. They might have a slightly different thought process than me about protecting the information and what should be acknowledged. But I think if they want to do the right thing before they kind of sunset, in their lives, I think this would be a noble thing to do if they're watching right now and, they know who they are and it'd be great.
Anyway, he kind of spills a lot of the beans there, but it's such a complex legal problem. And the treason really is against humanity. It's not, that's,
what you just played is like a completely new language. The language of politics in Earth 2023, when the last thing you want to utter is anything that is honest, anything that is truthful, that everything is reduced to acronyms, letters, numbers, and treason and serious punishment. Why is no one standing up and saying, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about other life in this universe. Why should this not be public knowledge to every child and adult on planet Earth? Why has this arcane language with treason as a punishment, or that you would be subject to the laws of treason if you would tell the truth, that we are not alone in this universe, and that Grush and others have seen bodies. Lots of people have seen bodies. People who haven't even been in the military, and they are afraid for their lives if they have seen a body in a crash out in a field. This is crazy. That's my feeling. It's crazy.
Who are those people threatening Grush and them? Do you know names? I mean, why aren't those names brought in front of Congress and saying, this is General whatever, and he's been suppressing the truth for 50 years, and he got that suppression from a general before him. Why can't people name names and just come right out? And that would not be treason. That would be heroic, wouldn't it?
Yes, and I think that if my dear friend Jim Marrs were here today, he would say immediately that the book that he wrote that was turned into a brilliant Hollywood movie is that JFK was assassinated under the order of the CIA director Dulles, because Kennedy wanted to work with the Russians on building a base on the moon. That was 2 weeks before he was killed. He had written this letter ordering Dulles to start working on this collaboration with Russia on going to the moon, and the United States and Russia would build a base on the moon together and then introduce ETs. And it would be done so that the rest of human history, there would be no more war between Russia and the United States. And it was all couched in that way. And my understanding from talking with two sources who have worked in Washington for a very long time is that Dulles had the higher authority in that relationship. He was head of MJ-12. MJ-12 was given the authority to declare something like the elimination of a threat on the ET information. And that meant that Dulles would have to say to whoever they were using as the ultimate authority, the president of the United States is now a risk to national security. And once Dulles, director of the CIA and the head of the MJ-12 unit, made that declaration, then the future history was sealed and we lost a president. And Jim Marrs, Jim's work, his investigative work on the JFK assassination is some of the best ever done. And he was able to track down a person who knew that when Kennedy went into that hospital, they were already waiting. People already knew that there was going to be an emergency coming into that hospital. And Jim had a statement, and I believe it was dated and signed. I don't think he put the name of the person in the book, and it was, they had another brain in cold ice that was waiting to be substituted so they could take the photographs that would show a bullet here when the kill shot was from the front, from the grassy knoll, the famous grassy knoll. As Jim would sit here with energy and tell you the truth. I sit here with energy, frustrated that we keep having discussions as if there still is the possibility that there are no ETs. That's crazy. That's insane. We're in the politics of the insane. Grush would not be talking about treason. Treason. Dying in treason for knowing and having knowledge about technology and knowledge about UFOs and ETs. He has that information because that is the reality. And that is crazy. But if the thing that is the fester that keeps it all going are things like the assassination of John F. Kennedy, who wanted the world to know the truth, is how many of those events occurred that we don't know anything about either in order to keep this phony reality. Reality is classified. And that, Alan, from here to Sedona and beyond, That has to change. We can't keep going on in the rest of this century as a species made by other extraterrestrials on planet Earth and never introduced to all of the wonder that is out there. This is truly insane.
Well, I agree. So maybe let's come up with some solutions. Let's make the Sedona conference one based on solutions, maybe, and, you know, somehow a new formation of humanity coming together or asking the deeper questions. I mean, I was going to show this quote from Lou Elizondo, but he's also still on the other side, worried about treason, worried about those things. But maybe I'll just show it anyway, because it's worth sort of recapping the hope that maybe there is some possibilities of, okay, this is just from the 13th. This is Elizondo's Twitter. Wait, no, that's
Shouldn't
not
it be the president's?
no, here. Twitter on October 13th. Howdy, folks. Just a quick, sorry, where's that? Wait, quick.
Yeah, I mean,
Wait, I had it. Yeah, just a quick update for you to consider. Please know that ongoing efforts are underway that will reveal themselves by early to mid 2024 at the risk of haters trying to sabotage our efforts. I cannot be precise at this time, but if you have learned anything over the last 5 years, I never make empty promises. Trust me, this is worth it. Special thanks to Chris Mellon and Jay Stratton, whoever Jay Stratton is. So there's people working for the truth. There's still, I don't trust Elizondo completely because he's still inside the government. I trust Grush more as kind of like a kind of innocent trying to come out with what he knows. But these power brokers that you keep talking about, when are they going to fall or be revealed or exposed? That's the key kingpin to the whole situation. There's someone or a group that's stopping this at the door to the public, right? I mean,
There is a higher control than elected human officials.
right.
Definitely.
The JSOC. The JSOC. You said.
JSOC is a major power center. That's the Joint Command Operation, a Joint Special Operations Command, and they have tremendous power. And they've been given charters that have to do with just rules. No one is to know anything about extraterrestrials or UFOs or back engineering technology. And that's what they are supposed to stay. They are supposed to keep insulation on all of the nobody is to know. And that's the part that has to change. We can't keep insulating lies and policies of denial from access by the human family. That just perpetuates that we're on a planet that is schizophrenic.
But your source, your inside guy, no, he's on both sides. I mean, why doesn't he come out and say, guess what? I'm going to stand in
For
front of the
exactly
television.
the same reason that Grush says. They will be punished up the kazoo. I don't have a single source who is not worried about terrible punishment, but
Who's
I have worked
punishing
out
them?
ways to communicate.
Can't your source, well, say, if I do this, this person or group is going to punish me and try to destroy me? Can't they come out with the whole truth? I'm not saying they should, or I don't want to put anyone at risk, but isn't that the real choice we're in now? Saying, I'm going to come out, and if I do, this is going to happen because this person and these groups of people are after, and name names and have them tracked and lay it all out like Jim Mars would do on the table. I mean, isn't that possible that someone can do that?
I don't think so. It's why you're seeing all of the consternations of Grush, what he's going through. That last soliloquy that he gave to those guys,
Yeah.
in a strange gibberish language, that I'm not being critical of him. I'm saying that's the kind of gibberish that people are allowed to give other humans, which is gibberish. about why they can't tell the truth. That's what it boils down to.
Right.
And worrying about treason and all. And I think that the power brokers who have, we'll call it deep working knowledge, they have vested interests in their titles, their money flow, and a whole lot of things. Keeping the truth from the world has become a huge business.
Business, how are they making money from that? Are they selling secrets, UFO secrets, to private industry? Is that how they're making money?
What I mean is, I think it's their handshake of company to company that get together.
Yeah.
A lot of those handshakes would be organized by, let's say that it relates to iridium. And iridium is really key to a lot of UFO technology, let me tell you. And so let's say that the President of the United States receives information that we have found iridium on Psyche, the middle asteroid. That discussion is going to stay controlled by the same people who are controlling no truth on UFOs, ETs, planets, asteroids, no. So the power lines, the money, the power are drawn to support those that are paid to lie.
So they're getting a kickback then, because, and they're taking material that belongs to the American people and making their own profits off of that. That's why people are being killed and exposed, right?
It's information that belongs to this world.
Yes.
Not just to the United States, but you've hit on one of the problems. If there's only 4 or 6 nations that really have deep lines running into with ETs and what's out there that they want to make commerce with. If we go forward and we get the headline in the New York Times and the Washington Post and the BBC and around the world in the respectable media, we're not alone, and there are details about the ETs, the true history. If that comes, you, I, and a few of us will know if they're lying or if they're being honest. But from that headline forth, how much more of the gibberish of treason and secrets will remain the language behind the headline? I never thought that it would go on beyond the headline. And now, having seen what has happened since April to now, and the hearing and everything that happened, it's almost phony. You get the feeling that part of the strategy now is, how do they hold the pre-announcement world intact? How is the United States going to keep its highest extraterrestrial technology secrets from Russia, from Iran, from whoever are our perceived enemies? So in a strange way, I can imagine we will have a kind of release from a fictional, made up history of lies. And we will start getting more from the web and from Hubble. And there will be, instead of all of these kind of tantalizing headlines, oh, this is a planet and it may have water and it may have carbon, like they're getting us set up to start reporting live. Well, run your mind through, if the tall whites, real beings, they can be 9 to 12 feet tall, depending upon where they are in their growth cycle, or 8 feet or 7. If they're introduced to us in public, are they ever going to do a sit-down interview with CBS or CNN? And
No.
once you start asking questions like that sound childish, they're not. It is that there is a real human world, and we are at a tremendous revolutionary point. I beg the universe to let us go forward with truth, that we change from the machinations of treason and murder and money control, and we take that out, and that the next whole huge age, learning how to do telepath and telepathy and watching the neutralization of gravity by rods and all of the things that are wondrous, but they have been in operation on this planet for thousands of years in non-human hands. And now we're going to move into a new period. And I hope that there's more of you guys and me and others like us, who the one thing we care about the most is the truth, not whether an asteroid is going to make us $14 trillion.
Well, this is why we are gathering in March, seriously, with leaders. No, true. I mean, this is why I go to these events, the Conscious Life Expo in February, and in March, we'll be gathering with the high intention to bring forth the divine capabilities that lie in each human being, their telepathic powers. I'm going to teach a remote viewing course there. There's so many people that are very skilled coming out. Anita Moorjani, do you know her work, Linda? Anita Moorjani?
I know of her, but I don't know her.
She is one of the most fantastic, compassionate human beings I've ever met. She actually died, went to the other side, and has come back with no fear of that, but telling people how to truly live. You know, the name of her book is Dying to Be Me, and she had to die in order to find out who she was. Well, she's telling us we don't have to do that, but we can find the same passion you have for this subject, and the truth is what is capable for everyone to live that way. I mean, I'm passionate about this. It's the most fascinating, complex, multi-level thing. Suzanne is doing the work all the time, investing so much time and money and effort into bringing people together. And
thank you, Suzanne.
And so many people are. I'm hopeful. It doesn't sound hopeful, no, what we're talking about, but I am hopeful that maybe, like John Lennon said, it's a little cliche, but imagine no people, no religion, no wars, everybody living for today. And I think that's, not just dreaming.
It's what I have always said at the Earth Files YouTube channel about information that I had a discussion a long time ago, that the Greeks were real ETs. And they left in part of their writing a kind of legacy about what humans should try to aim for. Agape love that comes from the ancient Greeks who were ETs. And agape love, I look at my cats and I feel the pressure of love. I look at a mother going across the street with a baby in a carriage, and I feel that same love. I will never meet that woman or that child probably, but I feel a pressure. And I think that pressure, when you see even a stranger and you feel you want to embrace them because they are a fellow being, and you recognize that, not differences, you recognize the fellow being. And if you feel the love that comes from a soul to a soul, and we could live like that on earth, that to me would be the new heaven on earth. And that's probably what the tall whites would have joy about. And then maybe that's part of what they're waiting for, is will this experimental species that can be so difficult, can be so fractious, and yet there's something about human beings that I feel is maybe a miracle. And we have never been told. We don't have any perspective. And if we could go into this next era with the perspective of loving a complete stranger, meaning your soul recognizes this being and all of the flippant sex jokes, all of that. We need to have a new gear in which humans can love each other without any retaliation, anything negative, just an embrace and support of our fellow being. And that's how I would like to meet a tall white. I'm thinking about it. I go to sleep thinking tall white, meaning I would like to be able, I'm only 5'2", and I think I could handle it psychologically if it was at its full height at 12 feet, but maybe not. But nevertheless, I try different views, 8 feet, 10 feet, trying to get myself used to the concept of something that would be very tall. But I'm always in these meditations, I guess. My hand goes out and I feel warmth coming out of my hand. And for some reason, I do it like this. I have no idea. I'm just telling you, that just seems to be what happens. It's like a signal. And then I have periodically felt in whatever the dream states are, because I would love to have the experience of knowing what it would be like to try to telepathically communicate with a tall white. And every once in a while, I get something back. It's like my hands, like that something's teaching me. Use your hands. Begin to concentrate on the fact that you can feel energy coming in and out of your hands. And to be able to I guess the question I most would like to ask, dear tall white, is this universe really a hologram projected from another dimension? Because that opens up all of the biggest questions that I have. The physics keeps moving toward this is a holographic universe. A holographic universe has to be projected from another dimension outside. How big? How many layers of intelligence does this go? And if we are being projected, the tall whites are part of the projection. Everything is part of the projection. Where is the mind or minds that would be able to project this universe? And
Maybe
that would be exciting to have a discussion with a tall white about.
Maybe those minds are really at the source of the human being. Maybe it's really us and we've just been dumbed down, forgotten, caught in the matrix. But I think our minds are connected to the greater mind that is behind this.
The thought that dwells in the light to me.
Suzanne, what
I
do you
do
think?
agree with Linda, though, about this idea of a source universe. And I'm a big fan of the Urantia book. And that's exactly what they say, is there is one central universe that is the only real reality. And all of the super universes surrounding it are merely holographic projections of that one true universe, where all of our eternal souls are projecting 12 aspects of their personality into these 12 dimensions. And that gives us our 144 soul extensions, right?
But war is still real on this dimension. I mean, we don't want to lose ourselves in, because then we're not looking at the reality we've all. So it's sort of both and, because we are living.
Yeah, the Anunnaki were definitely a violent race. There's no question about it. If you read Harding's book on the Anunnaki, it goes into such exquisite detail because she spent so much time translating all of the Sumerian and Anunnaki in huge detail. And it's called The Wars of the Anunnaki. And Enlil and Enki were brothers. And Enki was the one who favored humans, and Enlil really wanted us gone. And that was a discussion she and I had that Zechariah Sitchin and I had shared also. And that was, is it true that trinitite, exactly like what was found out at the atomic bomb test in 1945 here in New Mexico, the trinitite in New Mexico came from the first atomic bomb test. It fuses together silicon and it makes a very specific green color. They have found 3 big areas of trinitite in the Pakistan region, in parts of the Sahara Desert, and there's a third place, but it's that area. And the assumption, her assumption is that Enlil Enki, they had atomic nuclear wars with each other or with something, and that the trinitite in that part of the world is evidentiary proof that there was the release of neutron energy in bombs. So
Like
how complicated it all could be, that our makers included the tall whites that do not want to war, the Anunnaki that appear to war over everything, the grays, the reptilians who seem to like to fight. So there's a mixture in us. And if the yin and the yang symbol, which I think is the metaphor, the symbol of the universe we're in, you look at it, you study it, it's absolutely perfect, white on one side and black, with a dot of black in the white, a dot of white in the black. And the more you look at that symbol, the idea that it could be one, not two against each other, but one that could evolve into something that was complex and interactive. I've often thought maybe that's why the yin and yang symbol has been presented by somebody like a tall white. Our goal is for the white to never be drawn into the black. And
well, it's to know the dark, but stick to the white. We have to know it. You have to be aware of it, but not be pulled into it, because the world is light and shadow. But I think vibrationally, and this is what the Sedona retreat ascension is, the movement of our vibrational frequencies dimensionally. And you've said this in your broadcast, this is where humans are. We have to sort of will ourselves to a higher vibratory field, so we get out of the mentality of war and hate and all that. But I think it's a collective morphogenetic field when enough people, 144,000 or whatever that is, has that sense, it shifts to the kind of collective mindset. So it takes a lot of people coming forward to create that vibrational field. And I just had lunch with Lynn McTaggart, who wrote the book on the field. And she says, yes, we have the power in the field to change the field of humanity with the best of intentions. You know what they say about that.
But I want to leave us on a real truth, that it has to be considered who and why are harvesting tissue and fluids from animals all over this planet, and have been for decades, and it is ongoing now. And who and why is taking sperm and eggs from Homo sapiens sapien on this planet now, and have for decades, centuries. Those two subjects, as I understand it, are what our government at least has not wanted to bring up, and that I represent one of the few who keeps trying to report honestly and statistically what is happening with human abductions and animal mutilations. Because if you edit out something that is that global, that persistent, then you're editing out what could be our truth. That the genetic material of Earth now is very important to the survival of something else out there. And what is that? What is it that they are harvesting? The harvest has been going on for a very long time. And those are the kinds of answers that I think that our government should give us without any political machinations. Because then we would feel like we were all entering into this on some kind of an honest level. If they don't talk straight about mutilations and abductions, everybody's going to say, well, they're not even talking about that.
Well, it sounds like you should be president. You should be on the committee, Linda. You would lay out a whole curriculum, right?
Yes.
Right,
I
Suzanne?
would love, yes.
Because
Serious investigative journalist with facts over 40 years. You absolutely should be.
well, point by point, look, I mean, this is ideal, but if they would say, okay, it's time for truth, and Linda Moulton Howe is going to lay out the true history of the earth and humans,
I want access to that huge archive underground at Suitland. There's supposed to be something like 3 or 5 square acres of nothing but UFO ET files. Let me, you, a bunch of us who have analytical minds, have the government give us, go down, read everything, and then start writing reports.
But the first part is to lay it all out, say, yes, we have bodies. Yes, there are craft. Here's for the world to see. And let's get the best minds of human beings and the most compassionate to make sense of this, because I think that's the other thing. There's people inside the government who don't have any idea. Well, certainly not Grush. He's just a messenger, but he doesn't know what it's all about. And he'll say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who these beings, I don't know what they want. He says that. But there are people who do know. It's such a big mess. And it's like this ball of yarn that has to be untangled. And you're really the person for me, Linda, on top of it. Because you're looking at it all. And isn't she incredible, Suzanne? This is a passionate person.
And you know what? It's our planet, and we have a right to know. And I couldn't agree more.
Yes.
But
and I love you guys. I love you. I have come to feel this because I encourage it. Yeah. And there's a pressure, and it comes in my chest. And I think it is my soul. And I think you and everybody can do that. You can feel it. You can feel compassion for a complete stranger. And compassion is perhaps the other side of trying to go to truth. That compassion, when you can feel compassion, then I don't see how you could ever, ever kill a fellow being.
For sure.
And that's where we need to get to.
Yeah.
With the help of the tall whites, I would love to put my hands out in front and say, just give me some energy in my hands.
They are doing that, Linda. From what you described, you are making contact. That's to kind of repeat the title of my book, but you are making contact. No, you are. When you put your hands out, you're feeling something. Yeah. I would say trust your own intuition that maybe those are the beings that are connecting with you.
It's just like little tests, like, oh, there's something there. And I don't feel fear.
Well, trust, I think those are beings truly that are coming into your space too.
Well, so let's hope they're going to help this whole planet, because if they are the geniuses, if that's what aerospace people said, they are the geniuses. They are the geniuses above everybody. Then, and they can go into time, they can manipulate going forward, they can manipulate going back, that they have exquisite control. And my mind says, how could they ever then allow war? That's the child in me. And the answer always is, in one way or another, because they're not here to live life for you. They help you come into life on this planet, but that they are trying to see if you can grow and evolve into something that is as extraordinary of mind as they are. but that you must get rid of fighting and war, jealousy. And once that would occur, if we would come up in frequency, then humans on Earth might truly be the whole reason that the holographic universe was made.
Linda, thank you that you got so much
I love
passion
you guys.
and love.
I do.
We love you, Linda. And these things that we're talking about, I just have to say, like, I have an unquenchable desire for truth. And it's like the revelation of truth and the connection to our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters, the afterlife, you know, this idea that there are angels in higher realms who meet us in the afterlife, right? And our star ancestors. These are the three topics that I have focused for this particular retreat. It's
Good.
Our connection with the galactics, our connection with the angels and ultra celestial realms, and who are our star ancestors.
And,
so
at the moment of death, is it a transition from a three-dimensional frequency that could be in a hologram? And if it is in a hologram, that might explain all of the near-death experiences. That death is not death of matter. It is a transition to a different frequency.
Well,
yeah.
you know, these
Right,
are
because
questions.
people rise up out of their body and they realize I still am, as they witness their body in a physical form, and they realize they still are in the same consciousness that they were when they dropped their body. And so whatever, you know, frequency you're resonating at when you drop your body, there you are, right?
Well, there's going to be people at this conference that have had those experiences. And
Yeah.
That would be wonderful to hear.
I would think your understanding of the nature of the soul and what these people with near-death experiences had would be a great conversation, Linda, because
my foreword in Glimpses Volume 1 it's where I was 21 and was going to the Miss America pageant and wanted to do a very earthly thing, lose weight and tighten my muscles. And then to have that experience with light and the voice and you are one with the light is one with you, and you're in the hands of God forever. And to have everything that happened in that mountain at age 21, I've often thought, what would happen if every single human being had a personal sort of touch by the thought that dwells in the light? That too could be part of the evolution that we are to go through. Because once you have felt that, it has a frequency to it. It changes you. It does. And that the experiences with the light, how many, and going into near-death experiences, they're always involving a tube of light or light.
Well, this is what I think is going to be more and more common knowledge about the nature of the soul that supersedes religion. So there's a science to the soul, and this has to go beyond dogma and to realize who we are, and this has to be talked about. And I think maybe the tall whites somehow are connected to that understanding as well, because they're energy. We're energy. We're more energy than matter. So these are the questions for as we evolve as a civilization. I think this will be more common, these discussions. And I love your passion, Linda, and your dedication to truth. I've never met someone more dedicated than you. Because
I do like truth and I don't like lies.
Well, you know, it's not even about aliens. It's about what's really going on. You're such a journalist at heart that And I noticed that when we did that roundtable discussion with Richard Dolan and Danny Sheehan and Stephen Bassett, each of those people were there because the ET question fulfills a kind of excitement in them. Danny Sheehan, this is like the ultimate law case. Stephen Bassett, this is like the ultimate political challenge. Richard Dolan, this is the history everyone's waiting for. And for you, this is the journalistic marker that is the ultimate story. It's the ultimate human story. There's no bigger story for a journalist than,
because the entire truth of the earth changes once it's out. Yeah.
For me,
it's
it's
revelation.
excitement about the nature of reality. This is really what we're up against when these things come into our reality, these ETs and different abduction experiences. The nature of the world, time, space shifts, and I've experienced that shift in time, space. And that's what's so interesting to me. The way we cognize reality in the presence of these beings changes. And that's something that I don't even think the military or those generals understand. They might be aware of it, but there's a cognitive shift in the nature of reality.
One last hook.
Yeah.
Which we don't need to go into, but for people to come to Sedona for this conference, we must be prepared to talk about the hostile and extremely dangerous insects that are only 10.5 light years from Earth and Epsilon Eridani, and were discussed and presented to President Ronald Reagan, March 6th to 8th, 1981. That happened. I have talked with a man who was there. They talked about the ETs. They talked about this huge threat. It's now 2023. Is that huge insect threat any part of the landscape out there that is still keeping the Pentagon in a straitjacket? That's why this is worth bringing up. It was presented to Ronald Reagan. It was a discussion among the intel agencies. I know that there were some kind of collaboration with something, gray or other, having to do with how to keep the insects at bay. And so that's another facet that we all can talk about in Sedona,
Right.
Not for fear. I don't feel any fear. It's that we have to know what the truth is about everything out there that the ETs have told our government. The government should not be a lone purveyor and encloser of all facts about other life forms. And if Sedona and all other places where we can talk honestly can help at least have pressure politically on representatives, we can't continue once the headline is out with more policies of lies and denial. We need to have a reporting channel just exactly the way they report the weather.
Well, that's what I love about tonight's program, Linda. You've really laid out a really complex, intricate understanding of the phenomena. It's like all those pieces and more to show this is not just about, oh, there's UFOs here and they're real. It's about the geopolitical, spiritual, economic, integral aspect of the human being surviving into the next dimension of reality that's, I think, at our doorstep. I mean, some people call it ascension. I just say it's a shift in vibrational fields. And that's why I think the density is trying harder to keep us at this other level, because it's inevitable that we are moving vibrationally into this other place. And so the forces that don't want that to happen are taking.
Yes.
I mean, we'll talk about more of that.